Good to be back.
This is
I
fun.
actually got a call from this gentleman. He actually sounded like he was from India, but he said his name was Tim. And he offered me this amazing deal on a business loan. I thought, wow, this is going to take my business to the next level.
What was the interest rate, Michael?
I think it was like 13.77.
Today, we just want to start busting some myths about starting a business, where to start. Myth or even excuse, if you will. Excuse number one is, I can't start until.
If you could 10x that loan, that would be a great deal, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about it takes money to make money, right?
It does. So here's a trivia question for you, Michael. Who said this quote? Only a moron borrows money to start a business. Was it A, Malcolm Gladwell, Mark Cuban, or C, Mother Teresa?
I heard the word Cuba in there somewhere, and that's somewhere where you love to go. So I'm just going to assume it's the one that sounds like Cuba. What did he do?
He made like several $1 billion.
All right, I'll give him an ear.
We're just three guys that want to kill it in all areas of life. We want to be awesome husbands, fantastic dads, and hey, we want to make some money along the way and be good in business. So that's why we're here.
I like the order of those, Chris, how you laid it out. Husbands, dads, and make a little bit of money. Yeah, I can get on board with that.
You got. Sometimes you got to fund being a good dad and a good husband, right?
No
There's a
doubt.
life there. Let's jump into this idea, this myth that starting a business requires too much time and too much money. Jamie, you teed it up with this idea that, hey, we must have to go get this expensive business loan from India, right? That Michael talked about.
Yeah.
Really? Come on. I can't start until what? Fill in the blank. I mean, there's so many of those.
Yeah, until I know what I'm doing, until I have enough training, until I can be as good as the other guys, until I can feel confident enough. Those were some of the things I was thinking when I was starting a business.
Well, the confidence piece is huge. It's scary starting from nothing. Maybe that's why it's good to just start with absolutely nothing.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, that Brian Tracy quote really helped me a lot. And Jamie, you shared that with me a while back. Everyone in the top 5% started in the bottom 5%.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, so I feel like kind of a 1% where I'm starting here. So that means I could be in that top 5% at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I love that quote. It's inspiring to me.
I think the myth, or at least what maybe went through some of our heads, if you guys are like me, is that we can launch and just catapult to like 50 to 60%, right? Out from like ground zero. And so maybe that's where this idea of I got to borrow money, because it's very frustrating to think about launching and then being in that 5%. Like I have one client. I'm starting a lawn mowing business and I have one lawn. That doesn't really feel like a lot of success. But that's how all of us started all of the businesses that we run now.
I'm not going to start a business until I can pull off an IPO like the first week. Man, I mean, think about that. Any IPO, I like that quote you guys just shared about the top 5%, right? We all glorify that top 5%. These guys we see on Instagram that are killing it, and they got the mansion and the cars behind them, and like, come on, guys! They all started somewhere, right? Every successful company. Gosh, think of the top stocks in the world. Speaking of IPOs, they started in a garage with Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and these guys just tinkering with an idea.
And so when we get the Inc. magazine at our house and we look at the cover, if we don't read the stories inside, it makes us feel deflated, right? Even the businesses we have, if we're comparing ourselves with those guys like Mark Cuban and these other people that have these huge businesses, are in the bottom 5% if we compare ourselves to these other billionaires.
I wouldn't have got where I am today, which is just another stop on the journey, but it's a whole lot farther from where I started without having like all these other steps along the way that didn't actually feel that great. It felt like kind of like a failure because next to where I wanted to be, it wasn't even close. What I started to learn is that my version 1.0 or my version 2.0 was a heck of a lot better than version none.0, which means not starting at all. If I wouldn't have started and failed and tripped over myself and screwed things up, I would not have any way to move forward at all with what I was doing.
And that's part of it. Just sometimes you just got to move forward, and sometimes you got to fail and fall forward, right? You're learning from it. There's that quote from Thomas Edison that's all around, like, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. I mean, we've all kind of had that in our businesses and ventures that we've tried. You just got to go. I love what you said there, Michael, about version none.0. Like, just get something out. You got a buddy, Andy Traub, who says, just ship it. Just ship that idea out. Get it out there to the world and see what happens, learn from it, and go.
I remember one of my greatest fears was, well, what if I try something and then it doesn't work? And I spent all this time investing in it and trying to make it work. What a waste of time. And what I've seen is that actually I've learned so much from wasting my time, in quotes, and doing the wrong thing, that it helped me move forward toward the right thing that I wanted to do. It was not a waste at all. In fact, it launched me forward.
I'm thinking about this topic, and are we talking to our old selves or our present selves or our future selves? And the answer is yes, right?
Yes, and yes.
So it's not like this is an episode that we are teaching somebody who has no business to start, because no matter where you are in your journey of entrepreneurship, there's just a new hill to climb. And the tendency is for us, especially when we are successful, to say, like, no, I don't want to start over in the bottom 5%. It's like we've had a little bit of success in some areas of our business, and it feels really good. And then to start over from nothing makes us feel bad.
To put it simply. Absolutely.
Jamie, what was it like for you? I mean, you started out with the 6-figure Amazon business right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right away. A drink in his mouth.
No, it started off by being afraid to start anything at all. And me and Ruthie were living in Lockport. Michael, you remember that house, right?
Oh, yeah.
It was the one that I bought without a home inspection, and when the snow melted, it had a hole in the roof. What's that Thomas Edison quote again, Chris?
You found out 10,000 ways it won't work. There you go.
I remember feeling like an idiot going to the Salvation Army and like writing down ISBN numbers. And then I'm not that old. Like, we did have cell phones, but it wasn't a smart device. But I wrote down ISBN numbers, and then I went home and I had this dial-up broadband from the University of Buffalo. We had to like dial into the university thing. And you remember those modems that had that noise?
How old are you, man? You think you know a guy.
Yeah. It was at like 2000.
In the year 2000.
Yeah, that's what that story's funny, but it was like a Salvation Army or Goodwill on Transit Road in Lockport. And then they would get these shipments of books. I would go home and sort of find the ones that were selling for $25 that were worth like $5 and $10. It was like a year later, we had 2 bedrooms filled with books from like floor to ceiling. And that's how we started.
The kids were sleeping in the basement, but at least the inventory was up.
Yeah. But the cool thing about that business is the inventory made me feel like I was smart. I'd bring friends over and be like, these are all my books that I read. Like, I have books in Korean and books in Chinese and books in all these different languages. And no, I didn't really do that. But I did have all those books in those different languages.
That led to what?
No, that was just like what you set me up for. That was my version 1.0 to learn the system. You know, version 2.0 is maybe when I graduated learning the 80-20 rule and didn't sell a whole bunch of cheap books and only had 1 bedroom full of books instead of 2 bedrooms, and they were selling and I was making more money on less. But it's all a version, right? Michael, you told the story a couple episodes back about how you were just painting your house in Buffalo, and some guy walked by and was like, "Oh, are you a house painter?" And like, you looked at the paintbrush and looked at the can and scratched your head and said, "Oh, yes, I am. Now I am." And then a year later, you and a buddy were painting houses.
Not exactly. I actually remember one step after that. My neighbor called me, and the back of his house was like rotting and falling off. Like the whole back, like 2 stories, was like rotted and like sinking into the ground. He's like, "What can you do for me?" And here I am, armed with a paintbrush and a paint can.
You're like, those machines that have the big ball that swing back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. But my answer was always yes, because I was in kind of a desperate situation, actually. I had just been laid off, and I needed the work. So the job freaked me out. I had little or no confidence that I could pull it off. But I just said, yep, I can do that. I'll take that on. Wrote up a little estimate, and now that I think about it, he took me big time. I mean, he stole that project, but I rebuilt the entire thing from the ground up and learned as I went. That's what built my confidence. My confidence was not there when I said yes to the project.
So I love that. You just took a step. Yeah, that was version 0.1 or 0.1 or whatever it was for your business, but you just took that step and got going.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
So I want to take a minute and brag on somebody, and maybe here's a good time to talk about, we could also share about the new Facebook group that we got. My friend Gabriel Marino, who, Chris, it was a year ago that we were snorkeling together in St. John's. We did that tour, but he's probably going to be on that cruise next year with us. He started a company called Motivated Painters by buying a GoPro for I don't know, I'll ask him what he paid for it, but I can't imagine it was more than a couple $100. And he just started editing videos at the paint shop that he already worked at. And a year ago, when we were on that beach snorkeling, he was telling me how he had 1,000 Instagram followers. And now 12 months later, he's got 15,000 Instagram followers. He's selling all this merch. I think the millennials call it swag now. It's not merch, but he is blowing it up because he just keeps taking one step at a time. And his videos are awesome because he took that approach, Michael, like what you're saying, of doing a version. Like, he's evolved. Like, he's got better equipment now because money's coming in with sales of the stuff that he's selling. And he's just a real inspiration to me. I think it's cool that I want to definitely acknowledge him. He's in that Facebook group too. So that EFM Facebook group is an awesome place that you can connect with other guys like Gabriel. So jump on in.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for it, it's facebook.com/groups/EFM life.
And if you can't remember all those things because you're not like me,
because you're a human being,
if you go to efmlife.com, there's a banner there. You can just click on Facebook group.
Chris, I want to ask you, Chris, about how you spent some of your date nights in this along the same vein of bootstrapping a business. Talk about
yeah, man. I mean, just like you guys, there are some very not sexy parts of building a business, right? Like trying to figure out what the heck you're even doing when you tell someone yes, I mean, spending time at Goodwill. So for Alicia and I, when we decided we wanted to start this online business, I knew nothing about online businesses. I knew nothing about how to build a website. So there were countless date nights that we spent at the local Barnes and Noble. And I'm going to the computer nerd section of what is SEO? Probably was, yeah. Computer nerds.
Building a 6-figure business for dummies.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. That was one of the books I probably had open at some point. But it was learning SEO, right? Search engine optimization and search engine marketing and how to design and build a website. And man, it literally took that effort of saying, this is what we want. We want this life where we can have this online business. So let's grab a coffee at Starbucks and go to Barnes Noble and open up some books. And Alicia's there, looking at some marketing stuff and branding. And that's kind of how we started. And then it was just calling people in our circle of influence, our friends, our family. And that's sort of how Mission Travel got started. So it's not too sexy, man. It's just that hustle muscle, right? We talk about it. It's like, there's that quote, you can't have $1 million dream with a minimum wage work ethic. Mm-hmm. And I think, all of those stories there just pointed to the fact, you just got to get started. Mm-hmm. You just got to go.
How much did you invest to get that business going?
Oh, dude, I think it was probably like a $10 web domain on GoDaddy and a lot of coffee dates to figure it out. And then we just started slapping some stuff together. So it really was less than $100 to get going.
This would be a good time for us to just be honest about how much it costs to start up this venture between the three of us. Because we have spent a little bit of money doing some stuff. We bought some podcast gear. You know, we got computers that we already own and use for our business. Michael, you want to, I know what I paid because we all kind of chipped in and just kind of took some action and built out some stuff from each of our ends. So Michael, like, where are you at with this?
Where am I? Well, we all like kind of shook out our piggy banks, and there's a lot of clinking noises with the money that we spent just to get going. I remember, what did we pay for this? We just wanted a website up just so we could like get started and have something to develop. What did we invest, like $50 or something on that?
And it's not the website we have now, but Michael, you were joking around because I don't know where this lady was from in the world, but you were always like texting me, hey, can you have Sharuk change like the font on this or that? And I'm like, who is Sharuk? The lady's name that built the website was 15 letters with 8 different syllables in it.
And we could only communicate with her like during a 1-hour window because we were opposite time zones. But hey, it got us going, right?
No, that just debunks this whole myth and the excuse that it's like starting a business must be expensive, right? It must be expensive to start a podcast and have a website and do all this stuff. No, we found some guy on Fiverr that couldn't pronounce their name and we could only communicate an hour a day.
Well,
and
I mean,
boom, it's up.
If you want to have really good talent, though, like, for example, like if you want to have your intro and outro done with somebody that has a Grammy, you're going to have to pay thousands of dollars for that. So what I would say is you got to start really small with the version 1.0 and just not expect any quality of like any world-class stuff.
Wrong! We hired Grammy Award-winning voiceover artists for our intro and outro. For what was the cost, Jamie?
I don't know. He'll be mad if we tell him because every podcast is going to sound like ours at the outro.
Well, I don't think he'll be mad if he makes a ton more money in $50 increments.
So the guy that we hired to do our intro and outro with the copy that we wrote for it's changed twice, and now we're kind of moved past that because we're on version 3.0 with our intro of just kind of setting up ourselves. I don't know if this is like episode 18 or 19, I can't remember. But the guy that we hired initially has a Grammy. I think he has more than one Grammy, actually. And he's got an amazing voice. He's done commercials for like Toyota and a gazillion other companies that you know of. And we hired him. We found him on Fiverr. And it cost us, I mean, this guy is actually crushing it. It cost us $50 to do it. And he probably is turning out like 20 of those every couple of days. And that's just like one of the businesses that he has. That's another thing I hear. You can start on Fiverr, like using all these platforms that already exist. And you can get in front of the whole world through eBay, Amazon, Fiverr. What are these other, all these other platforms that allow you to use their services for them? Man, help me out here. I'm fumbling my words.
You need a lot of help, Jamie. There's only so much we can give, man.
I just had some coffee. But that's the point, right? You don't need to sacrifice quality for cost. You just need to be creative and inventive and find out who's doing this stuff. A lot of big name people that we know that have podcasts and companies that have the money to do that stuff, they use the same kind of bare bones budget that we do to start new projects just because it works.
Yeah. I mean, how many guys have you heard that are, friends or associates of ours that kind of do give this excuse like, oh, it just costs too much to start a business. Like we're trying to blow that out of the water and we're maybe a poor example, but we're an example that you can have a laptop and an idea and start looking at solving a problem and you can start, right? It's not that hard. A lot of guys, one of the things that's been popular over the last, a couple of years especially has been these ideas of course creations. Like, oh, I need to get an online course. So I just create an online course and I can sell it for X and then I get X number of people, I'll make $1 million. And it's like, oh wait, but I've got to have expensive software. I probably need to get a video guy in here to do this and that. It's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. Guys, listen to this, Jamie Michael. I made a course for mission travel. I paid nothing for you go to thinkific.com. Okay. It's a platform you can use. You can build a course completely for free. Not a dollar was spent on making this course. It's got videos. It's got all kinds of slides, and there's examples and downloads and stuff. I don't get charged until someone pays for that course. So I get paid, and then they take a small fee. So if there's something out there you're like, I've got some idea, I want to share something with the world, dude, go check out Thinkific. That's a pretty easy way to get started.
Chris, I did the exact same thing. No initial investment to build a course, and you can start making money off of that right away. If it's valuable. Yeah, put your whole self into it, of course, right?
Yeah.
But another thing I was thinking when you were talking too is this is something I really struggled with, is asking people for help. I had friends who had skills with building websites and different technical skills that I didn't have that I needed help with. And I was just so worried about, it's going to be awkward because are they going to want money from me right away? Or so I didn't even bother asking, and I missed out on giving other people a chance to be part of a cool project too. And so that's one thing that I am learning how to do more of, is reach out and just ask for some help. Even if someone can't help you, they could point you in the right direction, or maybe they have a contact that's going to help your business move forward. So that's
a great point.
Learn how to ask for help.
Yeah, we've got a friend who that we're all close to, Nick Pavlidis, a little shout out here, but he is just generous with what he knows. And if you have a question on anything related to something online or online business related or marketing, like, he is there to answer questions. And I'm sure that anyone has people in their life that can help with those sort of questions, right? You have a great resource with all your friends, family, and associates to just say, hey, I need help on this or that. And usually people are more than willing to share with you or point you in the right direction.
Yeah, or if you're in the Facebook group, throw a question in there if you're stuck on something. There's a lot of guys who've started businesses that can help you move forward. Yeah,
and that's another good point here. It's, us launching our podcast, there is more value in learning the path and the resources that our friends have learned along the way than it was for us. We weren't starting from scratch. It's all those things that we learned about Fiverr and doing the intro and outro and what microphones that weren't expensive in order to buy. We got those from our friends like Nick Pavlidis. I'm actually sitting here, the ATR 2100. He left it here this weekend. It's like, this is the mic that Chris and Michael are using. Like, how much did you pay for it's like a studio quality microphone. And what did you guys pay for your mic?
Yeah, it was under $80, and mine came with like an arm and like all the bells and whistles with it, and we're up and running.
I remember Nick was on John Lee Dumas's podcast, Entrepreneurial on Fire, and like that was the one that John told him to buy for the interview. And I think that's what he was using up until he had like millions of downloads, was the same $80 microphone.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss recommends it as his go-to on-the-road recording device, under $80.
I actually just listened to an episode this morning on my walk where he was in the back of a car in like Uzbekistan with Kevin Kelly, and that's what they talked about. We're just on they were like literally suitcases were next to their sides in Uzbekistan. They're driving up this like mountain, and they said, "Yeah, we're just in our ATR 2100 into the laptop here, like suitcases on the lap."
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
but so okay. Last point here, point number 3, right? This other excuse is that you must have to invest in some high-level training or coaching to have a legitimate business. Is that the case? Has that been the case for you guys?
Maybe to have like an amazing business, but not to get started. You don't need it.
You start where you're at. When you're in the bottom 5%, you use things that bottom 5%ers use.
Like books. They're only about $10.
I wouldn't recommend that Dave Ramsey turns in his microphone and goes and uses the ATR 2100. You start with where you're at. And the same thing goes with courses and coaching and everything like that. If you start when you don't have money by buying the person's book instead of going and paying $2,000 and buying their course or sitting in the front row. And I think that's what we've done. That's what our friends have done. And that's what we're going to teach our kids to do that, right? You don't start by buying Amy Porterfield's content course for $3,000. It's like you start going to YouTube and getting some free videos and put the time in and just learn to find out if you're even interested in doing a course. So
if you don't have $10, listen to podcasts.
They're free.
Tons of free content. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you know about that.
So, Chris, anything you want to add about courses and?
Yeah, so I remember another shark, since you mentioned Mark Cuban, and I always butcher this guy's last name, but Robert Herjavec, right? Whatever his name is. Yeah. But he says, don't start a business. Find a problem, then solve a problem. So the business comes second. Right. So what's the problem that you want to find and solve? And what books are you reading that you're like, oh, this is going to help me along here? There's someone that says, what's ordinary to you is extraordinary to someone else. So find what it is that you're interested in, that you have passion about, that you have knowledge of. And gosh, you can go on Facebook and find Facebook groups that are seeking out that kind of knowledge. Maybe there's something there, an opportunity you can invest in yourself to start taking that first step in a business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And our man, Chris McCluskey, I love what he always says about this. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. You know what? Let's cue him up.
Once again, so much good stuff. Where does one begin, right? I think for just some reflections that I want to share with our listeners, I think it's very important to emphasize that although we all entirely agree with the notion that you don't want to take unnecessary risks that if you lose in your business launch, it could cost you all the other things that are so precious to you. By the same token, it's just important to recognize that there are actually different ways in which we can wisely launch a business. So one way, generally the best, is to risk as little as necessary. I love Chris Gilbo's book. The title says it all, The $100 Startup. Just, put a little bit of cashola out there and experiment and try something. The reality is that not all startups are going to be $100. And so much more frequently, like all three of you and like myself, it takes a little more cashola. It's a little riskier than you wish. And so you do hedge your bets. You try not to risk more than you definitely could afford to lose as you build this, because you're going to invest money and you're going to invest time. You're going to invest focus of your mental energies and all that you don't just have sitting around with nothing to do. You weren't staring at the wall before you launched this thing. But I do think that it can be equally wise if you believe you've discerned by God that you are to pursue a business and it's going to cost you more than you want to let go of, and yet God's not letting you go. There are times where you just tighten the belt everywhere you possibly can, and you go on the light you're given. And like in our case here, when we moved to the farm, I closed down a highly successful Christian counseling practice in Tampa Bay, largest one on either side of the bay, and moved to this derelict little farm out in the middle of nowhere, foothills of the Ozark Mountains, dirt road. Where in the world are you going? Chris, you're crazy. Well, yes, I am. Unless I'm responding to a call that I believe, and my wife agrees with me that she believes the Lord had given us. And in that case, we tightened the belt everywhere we could, and we burned the ships. We tightened the belt everywhere we could, and we burned the ships because that's what we understood God was calling us to. So I don't go around recommending that to anybody. But I also am never hesitant to say, you know what, that's what we did. So, we lived in a trailer. We dropped health insurance after the birth of our fourth baby. Yes, big eyes wide open there. We took the little bit of cash we made off the sale of the house down in Florida. It's a beautiful house, in-ground pool, 4 bedrooms, beautiful subdivided neighborhood. And here we are in a single-wide mobile home trailer on a dirt road, and we kept everything liquid that we made from that, and we lived off of it for 2 years. I'm talking beanie weenies, right? But that's because of a different sense of call about business launch in that case. So wherever you fall on that spectrum, take the wisdom that's here and, like everything else we dish out from here, bring it before the Lord, pray it through, discuss it with your wife, the other half of you, and then move in the light and the vision that you feel like you've been given.
Oh, Chris, that was so good. Thanks again for sharing. So we just want to leave you with this. What problem or solution can you find related to that? And what next step can you take with your business idea this week.
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. Visit efmlife.com to connect with us and others like you who are pursuing success in enterprise, family, and marriage.